I just don't understand. The idea of God just seems like such a fantastical idea to me. How do you know God exists? What evidence can there be for a good God? Is there anyone out there who's willing to have an open and honest dialogue? Just looking to learn more. This is a revised video of a previous one. Dear Mr. Atheist, thank you for the question. I can help explain why and how God exists if you'll just listen. Thomas Aquinas' teachings are about what God is and what God is not. Ens suum is a Latin term that means highest being. Others may think that Christians look at God as the highest being, or an old dude sitting up on a cloud watching us. That'd be pretty creepy. But they do not think of God as the highest being, ens summum. Ipse esse subsistens, a Latin term that means the sheer act of the be itself. That is the way Christians look at God. So what is the difference between these two Latin terms? Well, highest being is a noun, and the sheer act of to be itself is a verb. Is it to be or not to be?
To be or not to be? That is the question.
It is to be. So is God just a verb? Of course not. God is a force and a source in our lives that can impact us in many ways. That is what it means for God to be himself. The first letter of John says, God is love. Now, it doesn't say God is a lover, because it's better to think of God as this action of love. To help you understand this a little better, I will use a great comparison of a fish in the ocean. Anthony de Mello wrote this: help us to find God. No one can help you there. Why not? For the same reason that no one can help the fish find the ocean. Like God, the ocean is a force of life for this fish. If the ocean is gone, then the fish dies. If God is gone, then we would die, because God is a force of life and a force of many other things. For the fish in the ocean analogy, I know that I didn't acknowledge or point out any of the flaws, like the fish could poke his head up out of the ocean and see the ocean. But of course it is just an analogy, and pretty much all analogies have flaws. Like there's an analogy of an island in the ocean by Edward Handberg. He states, all that we will discover is but a tiny island in the midst of the infinite ocean that is God. Handberg goes on to state that this analogy is flawed because of course we can go past the shore and into the ocean. So what these analogies are trying to say is that God encircles us with his presence. Let's go back to the fish in the ocean analogy. Let's say that the fish, for whatever reason, can't get out of the ocean. How does the ocean show itself to the fish? It's going to sound a little crazy, but the ocean would have to become a fish, and the fish would have to tell that fish that they're in an ocean. It's like God sending Jesus down to us, telling us that there is a God, and he is all around us. God isn't just going to come right here, old dude with gray beard. He's going to say, hey, I'm God, I exist. No, he sent Jesus down to tell us that there is a God. Jesus is an actual person. He is a noun. He is what you would call ens summum, the highest being. God would be the sheer act of to be itself, ipse esse subsistens. So how can we know God actually exists? So I'm saying what God is, but how is he this force in our lives? Where is he? You don't have to look far to find proof for God's existence. You can find proof of God's existence through you and through me. There's an analogy by Rob Bell. It's about the watch and the watchmaker. So this watch, it has all these complex parts. Let's pretend I have a watch on. Put me in solitary confinement. And if I took this watch apart to every single piece, every gear, every little thing, and I left, and I came back the next day, what's the watch going to look like? it's going to be all those parts. If I try to put it together, I don't know how to do it. I'm not a watchmaker, because the watch is so complex. It needs a watchmaker to put it together. I think I am more complex than a watch in my physical being, so it must take some higher being like God to put us together. For what can be known about God is plain to them, because God has shown it to them. Ever since the creation of the world, his invisible nature, namely his eternal power and deity, has been clearly perceived in the things that have been made. From the Catechism. This is saying that God shows himself through the beautiful things, places, and people that he makes, like you and me. That is how God shows his existence through us. So what is my evidence for God? We all have moments that we love to look back on and appreciate the beauty of that moment. For me though, it was my dog Riley. Although the night before we had to put him down, he was crying, so at 3 a.m. in the morning I took him for one last walk. I took this photo. This photo captures the love, beauty, and goodness of our relationship. And that was God for me. God is the source of all love, goodness, and beauty. So I tried to give plenty of examples of how God could exist, and if he does, where he could be right now. Mr. Atheist, I hope you are satisfied with my answer.